June 2013, several California lawmakers jointly submitted a bill. They wanted to rename the San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge's western span after former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown. These lawmakers only intended to flatter the highly respected Willie Brown. What the lawmakers did not expect was that their flattery stirred up a hornet's nest. No sooner had the proposal been submitted than the public immediately voiced their disapproval. Faced with this proposal, the people of San Francisco collectively lost it, saying, "What kind of treacherous scheme is this from disloyal subjects without morals? Who does Willie Brown think he is? How dare you try to please him so shamelessly? Even if the Bay Bridge really needs to be named, it definitely should not be named after a mere subject. It can only belong to our supreme United States of America." Emperor Norton, the 1820s, were not good years for Great Britain. The victory at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815 allowed Britain to completely crush Napoleon and establish its position as the world's leading power. But everyone has their moment of glory. Don't assume a moment lasts forever. To defeat Napoleon, Great Britain nearly sacrificed itself. Post-Napoleonic Wars, Britain's Pyrrhic victory felt like a defeat. Years of accumulated wealth were almost entirely depleted. The domestic economy declined, and unemployment rates repeatedly reached new highs. Lobsterbacks returning from the European front, without jobs. They were itching to cause trouble every day. Some wanted to fight for justice through the system, while others wanted to take matters into their own hands. Luckily, Marx was just a baby back then. Otherwise, the October Revolution might have happened a century or two early. 1816. Spy Fields riot in England. 1817. Pentridge Rising. 1819. Peterloo Massacre. Late February 1820, a coffee shop owner in London thought the entire cabinet was a bunch of deadbeats. He wanted to eliminate the entire cabinet. Surprisingly, this radical proposal attracted many supporters. If the Cato Street conspiracy had not been discovered early, it almost became the British version of the February 26th incident. Entering the 1820s, the then British Prime Minister Robert could no longer tolerate it. These Brits were out of control. Following the principle of rather ruin others than ruin ourselves, Britain began systematically relocating its population to the colonies. Starting in April 1820, a total of over 4,000 British immigrants sailed to the Cape of Good Hope. They were known as the 1820 settlers. This group later became an important part of white South Africa. Among these immigrants were John and Sarah Norton. Unlike the other immigrants, this couple was not poor at all. They went to South Africa simply to develop a bigger business. They took their young eldest son, Joshua Abraham Norton, to South Africa by sea. Little did they know that this trip of theirs would be a misstep that would make them figures of legend. After arriving in South Africa, John Norton's business developed rapidly. He not only sold various goods, but also bought many plantations, constantly expanding inland. However, his son, Joshua Norton, had a bad relationship with his father. After growing up, he left South Africa to trade in England and America. John Norton passed away in 1848. As his only heir, Joshua Norton returned to South Africa to inherit the family fortune. Then, to his surprise, after years of his father's management, the legacy left behind was not exactly a fortune, but at least it could be said to be a bottomless pit of debt. In his letters, young Norton bitterly complained about his unfilial relatives. His savings from several years in England were all used to pay off his father's debts, only to get back a few broken properties. In October 1849, Norton, with no other choice, sold all his assets in South Africa, exchanged them for $40,000 and boarded a ship. On November 23rd of that year, he arrived in his loyal San Francisco. Norton initially came to San Francisco simply to do business here. With the opening of gold mines in the American West, San Francisco was flooded with people coming to pan for gold. That vibrant vitality, the scene of everything flourishing, was forever etched in his mind. However, Norton did not come here to pan for gold. He came to make money off the gold miners. After arriving in San Francisco, he provided local gold miners with lodging, food, tools. He achieved his own financial freedom by helping others achieve theirs. In those days, panning for gold was a gamble, but gamblers might lose, while the house always wins. 2 years passed. The house, Norton, was raking it in. The $40,000 he brought to San Francisco had grown into $250,000. This was a huge sum in those days. It allowed him to comfortably enter high society. But when capital expands to a certain point, it inevitably leads to speculation. Norton, now with capital in hand, unfortunately embarked on this path. The story begins in December 1852. Norton heard some news. He heard that in China, across the ocean, there was a guy named Hong Xiuquan who had some disagreements with the Chinese emperor. The two sides had a little friction. Norton did not understand what the taping Heavenly Kingdom was, but what he did know was that San Francisco's rice was almost entirely imported from China, and the Qing dynasty would stop all grain exports that year. In reality, China stopping grain exports at that time was not a big deal for San Francisco, because rice was mainly a staple for the Chinese, not the white people with the most purchasing power. And rice was not a scarce resource. Many countries produce it, although this was not a big deal. Someone started a rumor to capitalize on the situation. In the ensuing panic, people started hoarding rice. The price of rice in San Francisco quickly rose from 4 cents to 36 cents per pound. Look, there is no rice available now. You think it is expensive? I think it is expensive too. With rice prices soaring, Norton decided to take advantage of the rumors. He gathered all his cash and mortgaged his assets to buy rice at 12.5 cents per pound. That was about to be shipped from Peru to San Francisco. He planned to make a killing by exploiting the information gap. But before Norton's Peruvian rice even reached the San Francisco dock, someone had already imported over 70 ships full of rice from Japan. The price of rice in San Francisco plummeted from 36 cents to 3 cents. By the time Norton's rice arrived in San Francisco, it was a complete disaster. What did he want from you? And just like that, the would-be monopolist, Norton lost his entire nest egg. Thinking of his late father, Norton wished he could join him in the afterlife due to the complete collapse of his finances. In August 1856, Norton officially declared bankruptcy. The bank seized all his assets. Hong Xiuquan probably never dreamed that the butterfly effect caused by him could bankrupt an American across the ocean. After his bankruptcy, Norton not only withdrew from high society, but also essentially withdrew from human society. After his house was taken away, he disappeared from everyone's sight. No one knew where he went, nor did anyone know what he experienced. The people of San Francisco were never short of gossip, and Norton simply disappeared from public view, until one day in the future, he would return like a bolt of lightning. September 17, 1859. George Fitch, the editor of the San Francisco Evening Bulletin, started his day at the office. In the 19th century, being the editor of a local newspaper was a rather painful task. Back then, information did not travel fast. There was not enough news to satisfy readers. San Francisco's local trending topics were so scarce that they were desperate for anything. Just as Fitch was racking his brains in the office, wondering what the hell he should make up today, there was a knock on the office door. The visitor was very polite, knocking 3 times respectfully. Discard. Without thinking much, he casually said, "Come in." When Fitch saw the visitor's attire, his heart skipped a beat. This person's style was quite unique. He wore a wrinkled trench coat on his upper body, but gray miner's pants on his lower body, and on his head was a soft canvas hat. The feeling this outfit gave off was like Sarah Brightman cosplaying in her own private clothes. It was perfectly natural. And this visitor was none other than the long-lost Joshua Norton. When Fitch saw Norton, he immediately made his own judgment. He thought this definitely was not a normal person. This guy was probably out of his mind. Crazy. But when Norton spoke and explained his purpose to Fitch, the editor changed his mind. He found that this big shot spoke with the air of a British gentleman. There was nothing abnormal about him at all. He first exchanged pleasantries about the weather. Then, politely, he took out a piece of paper and said he needed to publish an announcement in the newspaper. Of course, he would pay for it. It is always a good thing. Fitch picked up the note Norton gave him. He glanced at the contents, dispelling his previous doubts. Yep, he is definitely crazy. The note read, "In America, at the strong request of the vast majority of citizens from Algo Bay and residing in San Francisco, California, after 9 years and 10 months of constraint, Joshua Norton formally declares himself Emperor of China, and by this, bestows upon myself supreme power. Haha. A true decree. Representatives from the federal states are to assemble at the city's concert hall next year to discuss reforming the federal constitution in order to alleviate this nation's ever-growing sins and to strengthen the confidence of both domestic and foreign entities in our stability and integrity. Emperor Norton I of America." Undoubtedly, this kind of announcement is not something a normal business could pull off. Most people would steer clear of something like this. But as the editor-in-chief of a newspaper, Fitch was clearly not a normal person. He immediately realized the news value of this note to him. It was like a dung beetle finding a perfectly dry pile of dung. Perfect timing. After Fitch finished reading the note, he immediately presented it to His Majesty Emperor Norton for review, and to China, expressed that His Majesty is willing to favor our newspaper by publishing this imperial decree. It would bring honor to our humble dwelling. Not only will we not charge a single penny, but we are also willing to contribute some fortune to His Majesty's cause. How about $5? The Emperor happily approved. The next day, Emperor Norton's decree was published on the front page of the San Francisco Evening Bulletin. The headline read, "The Emperor has come among us." The people of San Francisco were surprised to discover that they had become subjects of a holy dynasty overnight. The San Francisco Evening Bulletin celebrated the event at light speed in that day's paper. Emperor Norton quickly became San Francisco's top celebrity, and regarding their status as subjects, the citizens of San Francisco were not unhappy in the slightest. Instead, they lined up to meet Emperor Norton. Norton announced his reign in 1859, right on the eve of the American Civil War. The social atmosphere was gradually deteriorating, and various conflicts were on the verge of erupting. And in such a tense society, Norton suddenly released such a hilarious announcement. It is no wonder everyone was so enthusiastic. The citizens of San Francisco quickly found out the location of His Majesty's palace. It was a boarding house room of only 5.5 square meters. People gathered downstairs at the palace, hoping to catch a glimpse of His Majesty. What is commendable is that it was not just the citizens of San Francisco who were culturally inclined. When the local army heard that there was an emperor in town, after the emperor ascended the throne, they immediately declared that the U.S. Army would definitely lend a hand. Not long after the enthronement decree was issued, army officers and soldiers came to pay their respects in full military attire. When the leading officer caught a glimpse of His Majesty, he was immediately furious. He immediately rushed back to the barracks. Upon returning, he presented His Majesty with a European naval marshal's dress uniform, a pair of gilded epaulettes, and a red military hat to enhance the empire's prestige. With this set of attire, the emperor's glory can only be described with one word: dignified. The emperor expressed great satisfaction and warmly received the officer and bestowed upon this loyal subject a piece of royal jewelry. Unfortunately, this piece of jewelry was later flicked into the sewer by the officer's rebellious son. If it had been kept until now, it would have been enough for their family to live off for generations. Seeing that the army's loyal subjects were gaining favor, the civil officials of San Francisco could not sit still. A civil servant from San Francisco City Hall also quickly came to pay his respects and stated that civil and military recruitment should each have their place. Unexpectedly, the army's deadbeats got ahead of me. From now on, any damage to His Majesty's portrait will be the responsibility of this humble servant to repair and replace. Emperor Norton stated that you are all truly loyal and devoted subjects. I am greatly pleased. Immediately, this civil servant was ennobled as a lifetime noble, and a decree of ennoblement was issued based on his closeness to the emperor. The ennobled noble immediately stated, "Your subject will serve as your hands and feet and die trying. I am willing to offer my humble service to your Majesty." Originally, regarding the appearance of Emperor Norton, everyone just took him as a joke to pass the time. Everyone thought that in a few days, no one would mention this meme again, but no one thought that the Emperor of America would accompany San Francisco for over 20 years. After some time, the citizens of San Francisco discovered that Emperor Norton was not an eccentric madman, but was seriously thinking about governing the country. October 12th. 1859. Emperor Norton had been on the throne for just over a month. To demonstrate the new dynasty's elegant governance, the emperor issued an edict in the San Francisco Evening Bulletin, announcing that due to the world's disappointment, and in accordance with the will of the people, the new emperor ordered the immediate dissolution of the corrupt United States Congress. Unfortunately, this imperial edict was splendidly ignored by the rebellious officials in Washington. Seeing that someone was disobeying the imperial authority, His Majesty Norton was quite upset. A few days later, he issued another edict, ordering directly to you, Army Commander Scott, stating that the rebellious officials in Congress were colluding with evil and corrupting the government. They should be punished. They are all unjust. He demanded that Scott choose between loyalty and being a martyr, to destroy the Jin dynasty and restore the Song dynasty. As a result, after the second decree was issued, it was again ignored by the army commander. Both edicts were resisted and disobeyed by the U.S. government. The emperor then used another channel to issue a third edict, directly announcing the dissolution of the United States of America and changing the form of government to an empire, and ordering the Pope to come and crown him, stating that only in this way can the impending civil war and other conflicts be avoided, because the third edict was simply too outrageous. Not only the U.S. government, but even the people of San Francisco collectively ignored the third edict. Everyone said that this edict was not issued by the San Francisco Evening Bulletin. It must be a fake edict, so we do not have to obey it. However, if you say that Emperor Norton of America was just a figurehead, that would not be entirely true. For San Francisco, Norton's intellect was very effective. Since ascending the throne, Emperor Norton would patrol San Francisco every day, wearing his marshal's yellow robe to inspect his domain. Sometimes he would carry an umbrella to use as a cane, the emperor among beasts. If he encountered problems with public facilities, he would immediately urge his subjects to solve them. More often than not, he would personally repair bridges and roads. Under his leadership, San Francisco streets rarely had potholes, sewers rarely clogged, and garbage was promptly removed. Many citizen disputes were also resolved under the emperor's guidance and dissolved. As one of the best places under the emperor's rule, San Francisco gradually became a model city for some subjects with improper behavior. His Majesty would unleash his thunderous rage on the spot. He would point his umbrella at the treacherous officials he did not like to express his anger. If the treacherous officials still did not repent, His Majesty would say, "Freeze. Go." This phrase has no meaning, but once this sentence was spoken, it meant that the emperor was very angry. This offense will be punished with a $25 fine. The emperor's wrath means a $25 fine, but although the emperor had the right to fine, and most San Francisco citizens would obediently present the $25 as tribute, but the emperor never abused this right. On the contrary, when the citizens of San Francisco felt recently empty, they would collectively stage great strides events to present fines to the emperor. However, in a city of hundreds of thousands, there were always some ignorant people who ignored the royal decrees. In 1878, a California Labor Party leader named Kearny angered the emperor. This person was known for his anti-Chinese stance. He frequently held rallies to persecute the Chinese. On April 28th of that year, Kearny held another anti-Chinese rally in the square. Emperor Norton, who had been displeased with Kearny for a long time, personally went to the scene. He stood directly opposite Kearny's podium and pointed his cane at Kearny from afar to express his anger. But Kearny was not from San Francisco. He thought, 'What do I have to fear from you?' He interrupted Norton and prevented him from speaking. This time, The emperor was truly angry. The emperor gave a rare speech, hoping everyone would make this bastard get lost. Kearney never expected that this seemingly half-crazy emperor would have such great appeal. Soon, his rally turned into a denunciation meeting against him. Citizens cursed and beat him. Occasionally, they threw rotten eggs at him. Kearney, who once led the charge, was shot down overnight and quickly faded from public view. This is the so-called prototype of the story of Emperor Norton protecting the Chinese. On the Chinese internet, there was a legend that Norton, in order to protect the Chinese, knelt before the mob and recited inverted texts. I have not seen any information about this outside of Chinese sources. If anyone sees it, please let me know. However, Norton, although he did not do as much as the legend says, Emperor Norton's ideas were almost all ahead of their time. As an American during the Civil War era, Emperor Norton's proposals included establishing an international league for friendly consultation between countries to avoid war. He opposed the two-party system. He said that both parties' congressmen were liars and that their rights should be stripped. He advocated for abolishing segregation, allowing black people to ride all buses and attend public schools. He wanted to liberate women, give women the right to vote and demand separation of church and state, advocate for religious equality, prohibit the oppression of Jews. Taxes should be used for infrastructure construction, prohibit embezzlement between San Francisco and Oakland, build a cross-sea bridge to make the two cities more prosperous. Although these proposals seem quite correct now, but in the 1850s and 60s, they were all splendidly ignored by the U.S. government. Lincoln, the American Zhuangzong emperor, was then contending with the southern slave owners. He really could not implement the emperor's wisdom. So although the emperor had the ambition to change the world, it was truly an ant trying to move an elephant. He had the strength but could not use it. But although Lincoln did not carry out the emperor's orders, it was not because he did not admire imperial rule. After the Civil War broke out, Norton wrote to Lincoln, the American Zhuangzong emperor, and Davis, the Marquis of Wyoming, hoping they could come to San Francisco to talk, to eliminate the conflict before the emperor. At this time, the emperor's prestige had reached all corners of the world. Once the imperial edict was issued, both North and South quickly responded. Confederate leader Davis wrote in his memorial, I implore your majesty to grant me $500 for travel expenses, because I only have one pair of pants, and these pants are already tattered and worn. I fear I will be indecent before the army. If your majesty's treasury is empty, I can only wait until I save enough money to come and see you. In short, I will definitely come next time. Lincoln's reply was relatively more serious. He replied, your subject deeply appreciates your majesty's great kindness, which your subject cannot fully repay. Your subject is currently settling an old score with the southern rebels. Once things are settled, I will immediately go and see my emperor. Regarding your majesty's desire to lead the imperial guards into battle for a personal campaign, Lincoln said it is just a small matter. Why trouble the emperor? Your majesty's body, the foundation of 10,000 cities, cannot be moved lightly. Chen Jiang will use your majesty's imperial guards as the general reserve force. After the 2 million northern troops are exhausted, your majesty can then clean up the mess. So the replies from both north and south to the emperor were all definitely next time. A bunch of people saying definitely next time, and then spitting in his face. It is so disgusting. I have to turn off the lights. As the citizens of San Francisco continued to bask in his glory, they gradually realized that having an emperor was not a bad thing. The entire city, because of Norton's existence, had become much better, and although the emperor was 95 years old, he was humble and polite to everyone. Mark Twain recorded that the emperor's demeanor was very peaceful and normal. Gradually, the emperor began to enjoy many privileges in San Francisco. Many restaurants in San Francisco provided free meals for the emperor. In the restaurants that the emperor frequented, businesses would hang a bronze plaque outside the door. A restaurant favored by His Majesty Norton, the city's concert halls, always reserved the 3 front row seats for His Majesty to await the arrival of the emperor and the imperial guards. At the same time, San Francisco public funds covered all of the emperor's rent and laundry expenses. The building association luxuriously renovated the palace. Meanwhile, farmers in the suburbs provided old vine ledgers. The zookeeper provided sea lion skin hats. Businesses large and small in the city also occasionally offered dandruff. As for inviting Norton to give indoctrination speeches, schools and organizations wanting to hear his teachings came in an endless stream. Although Norton's family was not wealthy, he was very enthusiastic about various charitable activities. He often participated in various events, calling on everyone to help the poor and anti-knights. San Francisco's mayors changed one after another, but the emperor's rule was never shaken. Norton San Francisco not only had privileges, but also the right to issue currency. Whenever the national treasury was unsustainable, His Majesty would take out a John Cardinal Company bond, print his own portrait on it, and use it as a national debt of the Norton dynasty to pay bills. Once the national treasury was full, he would personally go to redeem them. At that time, the situation in the United States was chaotic. The newly issued US dollars by the government were not widely circulated in San Francisco, but the emperor's national bonds could be used freely in all stores. Moreover, although the emperor had credibility comparable to the Federal Reserve, he never issued currency recklessly. Bonds issued in his lifetime ranged from $5 to $10. Back then, merchants allowed the emperor to redeem the bonds, which was really a losing proposition. These bonds can now be sold for at least $10,000 each. However, there were occasional surprises under the emperor's rule. In May 1867, a new police officer named Armand Barbier, A new police officer came to San Francisco to report for duty. He was a newcomer. To help him adapt to the environment, the police department ordered him to patrol the streets first. As a result, this hothead had barely left the police station when he saw His Majesty parading down the street with 2 hounds, making a spectacle of himself, followed by a large group of hype men. The young police officer was immediately enraged, thinking that this large group of idlers were doing nothing on the street. It was embarrassing and shameful to be wandering around naked. The leader was wearing this marshal's uniform. What kind of ascetic getup is that? The young police officer thought this person was simply causing trouble. He immediately rushed up and performed a series of powerful moves, arresting the emperor on the spot. When the citizens of San Francisco saw the emperor being captured, everyone was dumbfounded. What is this? This is the Jinkang humiliation. This is the Tumu crisis. In this small corner of San Francisco, someone actually dared to attack His Majesty. All the media in San Francisco immediately reported the news of His Majesty's arrest. Soon, a large number of citizens gathered in front of the police station, condemning the police department for serving the king and killing the armor, demanding the immediate release of the Emperor of America. At that time, the police chief of San Francisco, Crawley, was handling a case out of town. Upon hearing that Officer Barbier had arrested the emperor, he was so scared that he abandoned the case and returned to San Francisco at light speed. He immediately went to see the emperor, apologized to the emperor, and released him on the spot. Emperor Norton truly lived up to his reputation. He immediately pardoned the young police officer's offense. From then on, whenever the San Francisco Police Department saw the emperor on the street, they would immediately line up and salute to show their respect. The 1870 San Francisco census, under Norton's identity information, the occupation column clearly stated an emperor. His identity received official recognition from the state. Emperor Norton's identity was not only recognized in San Francisco, but also spread far and wide. King Kamehameha V of Hawaii maintained a lifelong friendship with Emperor Norton. He often stated in his letters that once the time was right, Hawaii would no longer recognize the fake president of the United States and would follow His Majesty's lead because the emperor was getting on in years. Kun Yuli and Jing, however, never had a wedding march. They remained alone. Past the age of 50, the citizens of San Francisco were worried about His Majesty's marriage and launched a grand and lively concubine selection campaign in the newspapers. After much discussion, everyone finally thought that the widowed Queen Victoria, who had been single for many years, was a suitable candidate. One is the Emperor of America, the other is the Queen of England. Suggest everyone type a perfect match in the chat. Under the unanimous suggestion of the citizens, the Emperor wrote love letters to the Queen, and he wrote several of them. Unfortunately, the shy queen did not reply, but under media coverage, the story of the American emperor marrying the Queen of England was all over the news, so much so that a reporter asked the Russian Tsar Alexander I for his opinion on the matter. Alexander I, completely unaware of the situation, went along and expressed his blessings. This became even more explosive news. The Russian Tsar was teased about it for a long time. In the 1860s, France invaded Mexico. The situation in Mexico was a mess. To give war-torn Mexico some comfort, at the urging of his subjects, Emperor Norton crowned himself protector of Mexico. Therefore, his title officially became Emperor of America and China and Regent of Mexico. But what he did not expect was that, in 1865, someone in New York actually imitated him. A reporter named Daniel Merton also performed a ceremony and ascended the throne in New York, and he also called himself the Protector of Mexico. But this Daniel was a terrible person. He was arrogant and full of himself. Therefore, almost no one in New York recognized him. When this emperor heard that someone was imitating him, Norton was furious. He immediately ordered the New York police to arrest him as an example. This time, the New York police faithfully carried out the order, but they did not offer him up as tribute. Instead, they sent him to a place we all know, Elizabeth's Hospital for the Insane. So, the American government and people showed with their actions that there can be only one sun in the sky, and I have only one sun in my heart. His Majesty Norton I is the one and only Emperor of America and China. Amidst the boundless love of his imperial subjects, the emperor's reign continued until 1880. By this time, His Majesty Norton had been on the throne for over 20 years. The emperor was already an elderly man in his 60s. 2 of his imperial guard hounds preceded him in death. General Lazarus, on the left, died after accidentally eating beef laced with rat poison and died. A reward of $50 failed to find the poisoner. General Bummer, on the right, on a cold winter night, died from a beating by a drunk named Lippy. The San Francisco Police Department was so scared that they immediately arrested Lippy, because they feared he would be beaten to death by angry citizens. But even after entering the safe house, Lippy still could not escape the citizens' revenge. A man named David Bohannon deliberately committed a crime. After being arrested and thrown into jail, he gave Lippy a beating. General Bummer's funeral was held with the utmost honor. As the Emperor's Hound, the cartoonist Zant drew a cartoon for the general, and Mark Twain wrote his obituary. This obituary for the Emperor's Hound was also published in the San Francisco Chronicle. After losing his companions, His Majesty Norton became lonely. He had ruled for over 20 years. The children who used to follow him around had all grown up. The people in the city still loved him. Every day, different people would invite him to tour and give speeches, but his health was gradually failing. January 8th. 1880, the California Academy of Sciences cordially invited His Majesty to attend. The time was set for 8 p.m. After dinner, Norton tidied himself up, still wearing his blue double-breasted naval marshal's uniform, still wearing his brass-gilded insignia, wearing his sea lion skin hat, and picking up the scepter presented by his loyal subjects. The emperor set off. The people in the city were already used to the emperor's presence. No longer were there many idlers following him. His Majesty walked from California Street towards DuPont Street. When passing Mary's Cathedral, he slowly collapsed. The nearby citizens and police were shocked to see the emperor fall. They frantically rushed over and called for help. But before the rescue carriage arrived, the emperor had already passed away. The next day, all the media in San Francisco published the news of the emperor's death on the front page. Fitch, who had published His Majesty's enthronement declaration that year, had already moved to the Telegraph. He wrote with a heavy heart that Norton, blessed by God, America, Emperor of China and Protector of Mexico, had returned to heaven. When people were celebrating the emperor's relics, they confirmed the emperor's celebration, more valuable than American cigarettes. The Emperor Norton only had $6 on him. All his assets were just a $2.5 gold coin, 4 ledgers, and 3 hats, a worn-out saber, and 12 unissued royal bonds. The coroner explained to the public that the emperor's cause of death was a hemorrhagic stroke. At the same time, the coroner also clarified a truth. The emperor's brain was completely normal, even a little heavier than the average person's. He was very intelligent, not a madman. January 10th. 1880, the funeral of the great Tang Emperor was held. The San Francisco Merchants Association paid all the expenses for the emperor's funeral, providing a top-of-the-line redwood coffin and a grand farewell ceremony. On the day of the funeral, tens of thousands of San Francisco citizens flooded the morgue. The police had to send a large contingent to maintain order. A lady placed a letter she held in her hand on the emperor's coffin, tearfully saying that she had grown up around the emperor since she was a child. Never would she have thought that a trip to Europe would be a farewell to the world. Ada. 4 strong men lifted the emperor's coffin on the 3-kilometer road to the cemetery. It was crowded with citizens who came to see him off, from millionaires to commoners, from priests to watchmen, from elegant upper-class ladies to starving vagrants. Everyone paid their respects to Norton. The emperor was officially buried. The next day, the San Francisco sky was darkened by a total solar eclipse. After the emperor joined, legendary writer William Drury wrote this story of over 20 years. The theme is that San Francisco lived off His Majesty, rather than San Francisco supporting His Majesty. July 8th. 1933, one of the children who had followed the emperor back then California Governor James Rolfe, finally secured enough funding to begin construction of the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. 3 years later, the bridge officially opened to traffic. Half a century after the emperor's death, his will was finally carried out. To commemorate the emperor, the San Francisco city government hung a commemorative plaque on the bridge. It reads, "A traveler, pause and be still, and give thanks for Norton I, Emperor of the United States and Protector of Mexico. Norton I, the emperor who wanted to build a bridge, has passed away, but the emperor's bridge still watches over his loyal San Francisco."